CGB Enterprises is in the ag space. We have about 120 locations across the United States that exist for the purpose of originating grain. Because we originate 800 million bushels or so of grain, we have both southbound and northbound barge freight. We bring the grain down the river, and we bring anything we can back up the river on the backhaul. We have a soybean processing division that has a plant in Mount Vernon, Indiana. We are in commercial lending, agri-financial. We recently divested ourselves of the fourth largest crop insurance company in the United States. So we exist basically in and around the ag space. We're about 1,900 end users when you look at the whole organization and some of our subsidiaries and owning corporations that we support all across the U.S. I think the people, it's been the conversation forever, I think the people are the biggest threat. I don't know that we can ever educate or test and re-educate ourselves away from the threat that somebody's going to click something they shouldn't, provide credentials they shouldn't, allow somebody to piggyback, plug something in they found in the parking lot. I don't think we can get around that. So I believe that the next step becomes building the tools to defend against what happens when that person does whatever they do. And that's when you start looking at micro-segmentation of your networks to limit the ability to move products to limit privilege escalation, products to limit the installing of software, but even, you know, if your multi-layer defense on your endpoint fails and the software is installed, then you have to look to minimize the impact of the attack. Everybody says it's not if, it's when, and everybody thinks that sounds good until it's when. And then you realize that the likelihood that when will happen again is high. And so you just continue to seek to minimize what happens when you do have an incident. So I've talked a lot about micro-segmentation, the ability to ensure that there's no traffic that doesn't need to exist. And if that traffic that doesn't need to exist does exist, nothing will answer it. So we are dividing our network into application pools. And our grain application has no need at all whatsoever to talk to the application for soybean processing. And soybean processing, those servers have no need at all to talk to our agri-financial business. So it allows us not only to silo our businesses, which is good practice, but it allows us to, beyond logically separating those networks, it allows us to ensure that nothing transpires between any servers. There's no way, if you gain control of server A, for you to talk to server B, because server B won't talk to server A. It's not allowed to. And Cisco Secure Workload allows us to take care of that problem. Whenever we find ourselves going down a Cisco path, we turn first to ceasefire. That was an area, especially with Cisco Secure Workload, where we felt like we did not have the internal expertise. We're in the middle of as I mentioned earlier, some acquisition and divestiture. Our operations team does not have the time. Would have been a very long time before we could get that installed. And ceasefire brought on BTA, who is our partner for Cisco Secure Workload, and they have been instrumental in getting that product off the ground. We're well ahead of where we would have been without their help, and extremely pleased with progress so far.
As we were beginning our implementation, we went through a divestiture of our insurance business. That enabled us to quickly switch gears because our whole environment is integrated. It enabled us to switch gears and segment off the servers and the workloads that encompass that business unit. So we could then allow the purchasing company to have some access in while keeping it secure enough that we don't have to worry about third parties having access inside the rest of our corporate network. So we kind of started down this journey fairly late in the year, August, September timeframe. And prior to the end of the year, we were able to identify the servers that encompassed the divested business unit. We were able to, in that timeframe, identify the communications that those servers needed back into the rest of our network and allow us to get that. And that was 101 servers and 6 different workloads. So within just a couple of months, we were able to identify and very confidently go to enforcement on that environment, and able to wall it off and keep it segregated. been fantastic. We've been with C Spire for a long time, and they brought BTA to the table, and I'm a skeptic by nature, so I'm always skeptical of new vendors that come in. But I would say that BTA's knocked it out of the park. The team we're working with as part of the engagement has been fantastic. There's been very little need for us to provide education. That they've been able to really take it by the horns and not only get it implemented, but allow us to learn as they're implementing. So I would say that it's been fantastic. So we actually attempted some of that using Windows firewall rules. It takes weeks per server to determine what needs to be locked out. It would be near impossible when you start getting into the 400 and 500 server range unless you already have a great idea of the ports and the communications that need to flow. It's near impossible, particularly without somebody dedicated to that. So what Secure Workload has enabled us to do is very easily see the communications that are absolutely necessary. It's allowed us to see communications that aren't necessary that actually are happening to allow us to shut some of that off that we wouldn't have been able to do without the tool.
So before I walked in here, I was on a phone call with a partner organization talking about what happens when you get attacked and what are the vectors of the attack and what would you wish you had done differently prior to an attack, or what should we do, what have you learned that we should do. And the ability of a threat actor to work through your network, besides the people, is probably the single biggest impact to your business. How I would value that from a monetary position is that it costs far less than even the premium on my cyber risk insurance. And it costs 100x less than the cost if my entire business goes down. And when we're talking dollars and cents, we need to look at what we're protecting and the value of what we're protecting. Are you $20 million a year? Are you $40 million a year? Are you $600 million a year? Are you a $6 billion organization? All of a sudden, when you look at, can I please have 0.0003% of our total expense for any given year to protect my network, it begins to make a lot of sense. And then really, if it prevents you having to make a claim, then not only is it less than the cost of your premium, but it's less than the increase in your premium the next year. It's actually less than the increase in your deductible in the following year. So security makes business sense. It's just a matter of getting to the point where the business actually understands the risk. And that's the tough part.